Hi guys. So today we're going to look at excuse me, some background information about Mary Shelley and Frankenstein. Now, one of the types of criticism we're going to study this semester is historic, and so I'm going to try to give you guys the historical background on at least the novels that we read. So when you're reading, you can understand, what was going on at the time in the author's life, some of their background, what what could have been informing them as they were writing this. So, um, Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley, um, her mother, let's see here. It says, I'll just read this, okay. Was an English novelist, short story writer, dramatist, essayist, biographer, and travel writer, best known for her Gothic novel Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus. She also edited and promoted the works of her husband, the Romantic poet and philosopher Percy Bysshe Shelley. Her father was political philosopher William Godwin, and her mother was the philosopher and feminist Mary Wollstonecraft. We will, when we start studying feminist criticism more, we will study some of Mary Wollstonecraft's writings, but she is the mother of Mary Shelley. After Wollstonecraft's death, less than a month after her daughter Mary was born, Mary was raised by Godwin, who was able to provide his daughter with a rich, if informal, education, encouraging her to adhere to his own liberal political theories. When Mary was 4, her father married a neighbor with whom, as her stepmother, Mary came to have a troubled relationship. So Mary Shelley didn't grow up with a typical childhood. Her father raised her in a very liberal manner, and she was influenced by her mother's work as a philosopher and a feminist as well. So, one of the early feminists. Let's see. In 1814, Mary began a romance with one of her father's political followers, Percy Bysshe Shelley, whom she eventually married. Together with Mary's stepsister Claire Clairmont, Mary and Shelley left for France and traveled through Europe. Upon their return to England, Mary was pregnant with Percy's child. Over the next 2 years, she and Percy faced ostracism, constant death, and the death of their prematurely born daughter. They married in late 1816 after the suicide of Percy Shelley's first wife, Harriet. In 1816, the couple famously spent a summer with Lord Byron, another famous author of the Romantic period, and Claire Clairmont, Mary Shelley's half-sister, near Geneva, Switzerland, where Mary conceived the idea for her novel Frankenstein. The Shelleys left Britain in 1818 for Italy, where their second and third children died before Mary Shelley gave birth to her last and only surviving child, Percy Florence Shelley. In 1822, her husband drowned when his sailing boat sank during a storm near Viareggio. A year later, Mary Shelley returned to England and from then on devoted herself to the upbringing of her son and a career as a professional author. The last decade of her life was dogged by illness, probably caused by the brain tumor that was to kill her at the age of 53. Until the 1970s, Mary Shelley was known mainly for her efforts to publish her husband's works and her novel Frankenstein, which remains widely read and has inspired many theatrical and film adaptations. Recent scholarship has yielded a more comprehensive view of Mary Shelley's achievements. Scholars have shown increasing interest in her literary output, particularly in her novels, which include the historical novels Valperga and Perkin Warbeck, the apocalyptic novel The Last Man, and her final 2 novels, Lodore and Faulkner. Studies of her lesser-known works, such as the travel book Rambles in Germany and Italy, and the biographical articles of Dionysius Larter's Cabinet Cyclopedia, support the growing view that Mary Shelley remained a political radical throughout her life. Mary Shelley's works often argue that cooperation and sympathy, particularly as practiced by women in the family, were the ways to reform civil society. This view was a direct challenge to the individualistic romantic ethos promoted by Percy Shelley and the Enlightenment political theories articulated by her father, William Godwin. So she's very much her own woman. So this section is particularly about Frankenstein. A little repetition. In May 1816, Mary Godwin, Percy Shelley, and their son traveled to Geneva with Claire Clairmont. They planned to spend the summer with the poet Lord Byron, whose recent affair with Claire had left her pregnant. The party arrived at Geneva on the 14th of May, 1816, where Mary called herself Mrs. Shelley. Byron joined them the 25th of May and his young physician, John William Polidori, and rented the Villa Diodati, close to Lake Geneva, at the village of Cologne. They spent their time riding, boating on the lake, and talking late into the night. It proved a wet, ungenial summer, Mary Shelley remembered in 1831, and incessant rain often confined us for days to the house. Sitting around a log fire at Byron's villa, the company amused themselves with German ghost stories, which prompted Byron to propose that they each write a ghost story. Unable to think of a story, young Mary Godwin became anxious. "Have you thought of a story?" I was asked each morning, and each morning I was forced to reply with a mortifying negative. During one mid-June evening, the discussions turned to the nature of the principle of life. "Perhaps a corpse could be reanimated," Mary noted. "Galvanism has given token of such things." It was after midnight before they retired, and unable to sleep, she became possessed by her imagination as she beheld the grim terrors of her waking dream, her ghost story. "I saw the pale student of unhallowed arts kneeling beside the thing he had put together. I saw the hideous phantasm of a man stretched out, and then, on the working of some powerful engine, show signs of life, and stir with an uneasy, half-vital motion. Frightful must it be, for supremely frightful would be the effect of any human endeavor to mock the stupendous mechanism of the Creator of the world." She began writing what she assumed would be a short story. With Percy Shelley's encouragement, she expanded this tale into her first novel, Frankenstein, or the Modern Prometheus, published in 1818. She later described that summer in Switzerland as the moment when I first stepped out of childhood into life. The story's been fictionalized several times and formed the basis of number of films. In September 2011, the astronomer Donald Olson, after a visit to Lake Geneva Villa the previous year and inspecting data about the motion of the moon and stars, concluded that her waking dream took place between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., 16th of June, 1816, several days after the initial idea by Lord Byron that they each write a ghost story. The collection of German ghost stories is called Phantasmagoriana. If you're interested, you can get a copy of it. It's still in print. But if you want to do some more research about that. So some controversy over the authorship of Frankenstein, as both Shelley and her husband collaborated on the story. The extent to which Percy Shelley contributed to the novel is unknown. Since Frankenstein was published anonymously in 1818, readers and critics argue over its origins and the contribution of the two Shelleys to the book. There are differences in the 1818, 1823, and 1831 editions, and Mary Shelley wrote, "I certainly did not owe the suggestion of one incident, nor scarcely of one train of feeling to my husband, and yet but for his incitement, it would never have taken the form in which it was presented to the world." She wrote that the preface to the first edition was Percy's work, as far as I can recollect. Charles E. Robinson, editor of a facsimile edition of the Frankenstein manuscripts, concluded that Percy's contribution to the book were no more than what most publishers' editors have provided new or old authors, or in fact what colleagues have provided each other after reading each other's work in progress. The subtitle of Frankenstein is The Modern Prometheus. Now, this is a reference to Greek mythology. Prometheus created man because Zeus had asked him to. Then Prometheus defied Zeus by bringing fire to man after Zeus decided to punish mankind for bringing him substandard offerings. So the reference is to the novel's themes of the overreaching of modern humanity into dangerous areas of knowledge. In the Romantic era, Prometheus represented rebelling against institutional tyranny, the church, the monarch, and the patriarchy, all of which are represented by Zeus. So we'll get into that a little bit more once we have been reading. Now we will start Frankenstein.